Alright, welcome to the Python presentation. As normal, I'm going to do a disclaimer here where this is not a Programming 1 course. We're not going to go over the logic of how to actually program something. This is going to go over the subtle differences between Python and something that you're used to, and because we have optimized for our alpha state students, we have to go over the differences between C# and Python. Okay, so this is going to be a short one, but we still need to go over this so we can actually use it for regular expressions, which is coming up next. Okay, so Python is a interpreted programming language and not a compiled one. So that's going to probably be your biggest difference that you're going to notice the most often if you're, again, an alpha state student and you're trying to compare the differences. Okay, Python is in most of your Linux distros. The one that we're using, it comes as default and it's Python 3. Okay, strongly typed programming language and white space sensitive. So very much like Bash, if you have a space where you're not supposed to or a tab where you're not supposed to, Python's not going to work. All right. Objects, okay? Everything in Python's an object, very much like JavaScript. So if you've taken our Intro to Web and you've used JavaScript a good portion, then you have a good idea what this experience is going to be like. But again, we have to optimize for our students that are coming from the C# aspect of things. So you have access to strings, integers, or numbers in particular, but integers, bools, float, function, and programs. So integer and float, this is a single object for Python. So that's a good example of a similarity between a Python program and a JavaScript program, where Python will tell you, or it will automatically assign what type of object it is based on what you give it. So if you give it a floating point, it will make it a float. You don't have to declare that it's a float. Okay. Variables, just like most programming languages, variables are a pointer in memory. Same thing with functions. Okay. Give you a couple minutes to read the rest of this slide. Data types: text, numbers, sequence, mapping, set, bool, and binary. For the most part, we're going to be using text, numbers, and that's going to be and bool. Those are going to be your primary ones for this course. If you end up using Python in the professional world, sequence is going to be popular, mapping is going to be really popular, binary, depending on what you're doing, can be popular. But for the most part, this course here in Linux admin, it's going to be text, number, and bool. Okay. Loops. This is another big difference, and it's why Python is famous. But Python for a long time only had while loops for a long time, because that's the only one that you really need. But for loops have been added, and those are your two options for loops. You don't have to worry about any of the others that you have gotten used to, and even something like Bash, where a while and until is the exact same loop, just with the opposite logic. So you don't need those. So a while loop is what I'm going to use most often here, but you can use a for loop as well. Okay, so that's going to do it for this presentation. All right, so obviously it was a brief overview of what Python is and some of the differences. We're actually going to be using it for regular expressions. So for the most part, and one of the disclaimers I really want to point out is that once you get to a particular level in your professional career, you start to realize that switching out programming languages is not a big deal. It just becomes syntax. Once you understand the concepts, once you have those mental models around, it just becomes one of those things like, okay, how does Python do it? Or how does C++ do it? Actually, C++ is significantly different. So how does JavaScript do it? Or how does Java do it, right? It becomes syntax and not necessarily a conceptual change. So like we have been stressing throughout the entire Alfred State curriculum, you need to be very comfortable with the concepts that you're dealing with and not trying to proceduralize everything. Because as soon as you try to make something a procedure, you're going to have a hard time adapting. All right. With that said, regular expressions is coming up. It is a topic that basically no developer likes. It is difficult to use, but when you need regular expressions, you need regular expressions. There's no way around it. So I will see you in the next video with regular expressions.